remember Jacqueline Wilson? So she announced a few weeks ago that she'll be releasing a brand new book in September called Think Again. When I heard this news, I was so excited. I literally loved Jacqueline Wilson growing up, and I really can't wait to read this new book, by the way. So Think Again is basically going to revisit the Girls series. I read these books when I was younger, and there are basically 4 books in the series. Girls in Love, Girls Under Pressure, Girls Out Late, and Girls in Tears. So I decided that I was going to reread these books just to refresh my memory. And oh my gosh, when I read these books, I was just in shock because I couldn't remember the content, but reading it as an adult really opened my eyes. So to give you a brief summary, these 4 books are written in the perspective of a girl called Ellie. She's 13 years old and in year 9. She's best friends with 2 other girls called Magda and Nadine. And they all basically want to find a boyfriend. I'm not gonna lie, when I was reading the first book in particular, there was a couple of times I literally had to grab my chest, put the book down and be like, what have I just read? Anyway, Nadine gets a boyfriend and he's like 17, 18 years old, bearing in mind that these girls are 13. There's a lot going on in the first book about him pressuring her into doing things that she's not ready to do. Ellie does tell her that if she's not ready to do anything with him, then she absolutely shouldn't, and it's against the law, which is 100% correct. Anyway, loads of things happen in this first book, like them getting into a club at 13, substance abuse, basically loads of things go down. Anyway, when I finished that first book, I literally didn't even know how to feel about it. To be honest, I think I might have read this book when I was like 12, 13 or 14. Jacqueline Wilson is a great writer and I really enjoyed her books growing up. And I do feel like the purpose of these books were there to teach us about life. So moving on to Girls Under Pressure, which is the second book, it continues to follow the story of Ellie and her 2 friends, Magda and Nadine. This book particularly focuses more on body image and eating disorders. So Ellie is convinced that she's overweight, Nadine wants to be a model, and Magda is worried about her appearance is giving guys the wrong idea. And then we have the third book, which is Girls Out Late, and this is when Ellie gets her first boyfriend called Russell. If you've read this book, please tell me if you think that Russell is a walking red flag. The way he kept telling her to stay out late with him, and then saying that she's spending too much time with her girlfriends, and then making comments that her art wasn't good enough. There were so many times I felt like screaming into the book at Ellie, like, open up your eyes, girl. Anyway, moving on to the final book is Girls in Tears. Ellie is still with this Russell guy, and the relationship that she has with Russell tests the friendship that she has with the girls. They're pretty much dealing with their own personal issues, like Ellie has relationship problems with Russell, Magda's pet hamster dies, and Nadine is talking to some guy online that seems like he's perfect for her, but there's lots more to the story. I don't want to ruin these books for you, especially if you haven't read them yet, but honestly, reading these books as an adult was so eye-opening. I literally felt like I could not believe I read these books whilst I was growing up. Actually, when I was reading these books, it reminded me of something that happened to me when I was in school. I think I was in year 7, so I must have been 12. We used to have these library sessions in school, so we used to have like 1 hour a week or something. We would go into the library with our class and we'd read for like 1 hour. So I remember my form tutor at the time, he used to pick on one of us to come and sit next to him and read out loud to him. And one time he chose me. And what was I reading? I was reading Girls in Love. When he said my name, I literally died in my chair. I was like, oh my God, if I have to read this book out loud to my teacher, oh, I just don't know how I'm going to do that. But luckily, he randomly decided to choose someone else, so I didn't have to read it out loud to him. But literally, just remembering that had like a flashback. And this is why I didn't like my time in school. One of the many, many reasons why I didn't like my time in school. So I'm actually really looking forward to reading this new book by Jacqueline Wilson. I think it will be a good way to tie up the story with what happened with these 3 girls. The way that the last book ended, it left me with a lot of questions, like what happened? So I actually wanted to also mention another book that I read by Jacqueline Wilson, and I actually reread this as an adult too. This book is called Love Lessons. This book is about a girl called Prue. She's 14 years old and she's homeschooled by her father. Her father suffers from a stroke and then he's unable to teach her anymore, so she's forced to go into mainstream school. She doesn't settle in well, she has a really difficult time just making friends, and she's really artistic, so the only lesson that she actually really enjoys is her art lesson. She has an art teacher called Mr. Raxbury and she ends up developing feelings for him. This book There are so many inappropriate behaviors, situations in this book that literally had me like, what is going on? Throughout when I was reading it. I remember reading this as a teenager and I remember it sticking with me like, that's not right. But reading it as an adult, I'm like, this is mind-blowing. Just to summarize, Mr. Exbury ends up developing feelings for Prue as well, and they kind of start a relationship. It's just so wrong on so many levels. I've spoken about some of these books on Instagram, especially like Girls in Love and Girls Out Late and those kind of books. And a lot of the comments that I've received is like, but why were we allowed to read such books as children? What I think we need to remember is that Jacqueline Wilson's books are made for children. And then we have a couple, like I mentioned above, that are made for teenagers because they cover issues faced by teenagers. A lot of her books cover children going through very difficult situations. And I feel by her writing these stories, she's bringing awareness to these situations that children or people might be going through. There are so many of her books that go through real life situations. I remember one that I read called The Worry Website, and that was where children would post about their worries and then they would get an answer back, I think. And there's another one called The Suitcase Kid, where a child's parents are going through a divorce and how that affects the child. And then we have Girls in Love, where one of the girls are being manipulated by an older guy, and then we have her friends that are calling it out. I don't think I liked the book Love Lessons though. I didn't really see the lesson or the story behind it. Like, Prue was definitely going through an abusive relationship with her father and then started a relationship with her teacher, and the end result was that she got transferred to another school whilst her art teacher got to keep his job and carry on as if nothing happened. I mean, it came across like it was her fault, and I don't think that's the right message we should be giving here. Anyway, I did enjoy reading these books again as an adult. I've also been rereading the Harry Potter series, obviously. And guys, I'm actually thinking of rereading Twilight again because I was absolutely obsessed with those series when I was like 14, 15, 16 years old. And I watched the movies recently and I really couldn't see the hype anymore. Maybe I'm just older and I just don't see it. So I might start reading Twilight again to bring me back to my 14, 15, 16-year-old self. Let me know in the comments what your favourite books were when you were younger and if you would ever reread them as an adult. Anyway, if you made it to the end of this video, then thank you. I hope you enjoyed it and I'll catch you in my next one. Bye.